Zenless Zone Zero is a game where Blockbuster never went out of business, where every character drips or they drown, and where style is substance. You play as Python, no not that one, a legendary proxy who is the guy in the chair for various agents who brave the hollows. Dangerous pockets of twisted spacetime that house ferocious monsters and lucrative treasures. Along the way, we'll get caught up in gang warfare, thwart a corporate conspiracy, get into a mecha fight, help combat Maids prevent anime 9/11, join a biker gang, and get motivated. So join me as I tell you the zany tale of Zenless Zone Zero. We start our story hot on the heels of the Cunning Hares, a ragtag trio that makes up an independent, problem-solving agency. Well, they say they're problem solvers, but it seems that they get into bigger ones than they supposedly fix. In fairness, their plan was fairly solid, it just seems they didn't count on the new Eridu police being as trigger-happy as American ones. The Red Fang Gang, the Cunning Hares, and the lockbox they were all vying for get blown into the hollow below. This action-packed intro makes for a great setup for what is essentially the game's tutorial sequence, and in typical Hoyoverse fashion, it's a nice mix of establishing the main characters, introducing the basic game mechanics, and just enough world building to explain why the characters act the way that they do. Hollows are dangerous pocket dimensions that corrupt anything inside them with ether energy, and while certain people are resistant enough to traverse through them, others get transformed into crazed monsters known as ethereals. We quickly find out that the hollows operate on backrooms logic and are effectively labyrinths that coil back in on themselves, and navigating them while inside is extremely difficult, especially since communications with the outside world using conventional means is all but impossible. This is why it's important for those who wish to plunder a hollow for its loot to have a proxy, someone on the outside who can maintain communications and update the team on how to navigate it. Nicole enlists the help of our deuteragonists, Wise and Belle, to serve as proxies for her teammates who are now lost inside the hollow. This is no problem, because while these two siblings run a video rental store by day, by night they are Python, a proxy with no equal in terms of skill and efficiency. They use the specialized Hollow Deep Dive system to sync up with a Bang Boo, a robot that's equal parts helpful guide and marketable plushie. All of this is just another day on the job for Python. Evidently, Nicole has had to enlist their help many times in the past, and as a result, is in quite a bit of debt to them. While the designs of Belle and Wise have grown on me over time, they are admittedly a little bland on the visual end. As much as Wise is literally me, he suffers from what is known as generic anime dude syndrome. As for Belle, she's literally Xianling from Genshin Impact. The designs of the starter characters, however, are astounding. I was honestly blown away that Nicole wasn't the game's first limited S-rank character. That's how good her design is, in my opinion. Billy is iconic, and Anby also has better design than some other gacha games' entire roster. I can't believe Hoyo waifu'd Abed from Community. It goes without saying that Python gets the Cunning Hares out of the hollow safely, but it's not long before we're sent back to retrieve the lockbox that got them into this mess in the first place. Evidently, whatever is inside it is really important, to the point where it's worth risking both life and jail time to retrieve it. You see, entering a hollow without a license is illegal, and typically has to be done through the Hollow Investigative Association, the primary government body that organizes and coordinates expeditions into the hollows. Those who would go in without the express permission of the law then are classified as Hollow Raiders. Being a proxy for Hollow Raiders, of course, is also highly illegal, but for some, the riches that can be gained by either salvaging valuables from a hollow or guiding those who are crazy enough to spelunk in this sector of screwed up space-time are worth it. This lockbox in particular is apparently so important, in fact, that mid-mission, an anonymous ne'er-do-well hacks Python's HDD system and holds their team hostage in exchange for the code to the lockbox. Through a clever bluff, the siblings manage to trick the hacker into logging into the account they used to take on proxy work, and then report the hacker to the police, pinning all of their illegal activity as a proxy on the hacker and extracting intel on what exactly was inside the lockbox at the same time. Unfortunately, the HDD was only partially recovered in this process, and now the cunning Hares are left without any way of escaping the hollow. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And if what the hacker said was correct, the chip inside the lockbox is essentially a master data record for all hollows, which would allow Python to calculate a new route out of the hollow. With no other viable options, they plug the chip into the proxy's bangbu, and predictably, everything goes haywire. If I had a nickel for every time I played a video game where the protagonists are forced by a heist job gone wrong to put a chip inside themselves that winds up inadvertently installing an AI into their system, kicking off an inexplicable series of events, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Fortunately for Bell and Wise, this Gen AI codenamed Fairy is only installed to their HDD, and due to it having access to nearly every piece of tech in New Eridu, its ability to gather intel is unparalleled. In fact, it has so much data that it can calculate new hollow routes in real time, which is practically unthinkable to Python. In exchange, Fairy says that Python will have to return the favor at some point in the future, but what exactly that means is intentionally left vague. That's a really shiny gun that you've just mounted above the fireplace, Hoyo. I hope the player base doesn't forget about it before you finally decide to fire it off. So the good news is that even though Bell lost consciousness when Fairy took over the mission, everyone made it out safely. The hacker the main character swatted was arrested, and while the cunning Hares missed out on a pretty big payday, Python have gained a valuable new ally in Fairy. The bad news is, they no longer have their main account, which means if they are to resume proxy work, they gotta rebuild their reputation from square one. Oh, also, Fairy eats up a lot of electricity. Like 5 times their normal electric bill a lot. Overall, this first story arc is the perfect setup for the rest of the game. It gives you just enough of a taste of the world and characters to be intrigued, but not overwhelmed. It explains why the main characters are incredibly talented and yet also starting over from square one. I also really like how Bell and Wise are their own characters and not semi-silent blank slate protagonists. Not only are they fully voiced, but in general they have their own motivations and agendas separate from the interests of the player. I'll get more into that later, but suffice to say, it's a massive improvement over the writing of the protagonists of Genshin and Star Rail. The prologue to the game may have been where the game gained my interest, but it's here that they gained my attention. We start with a strange girl practically busting down our intrepid Proxy's door. Her name is Nekomata, and she claims to have been sent by Nicole. In order to prove this, she offers Nicole's bangbu $1 million. It's on the fritz, but fortunately, Fairy is able to retrieve its visual data to verify past events. We witness Nicole and Nekomata meeting for the first time, where she offers the Hares a compelling commission to help her retrieve a family heirloom from a nearby hollow for a tidy sum. It's not just any hollow, however. This one is known as the Dead End Hollow, and it's the hot topic of the news because the Vision Corporation is using its abandoned metro lines to transport explosives to a sector of the city it just won a sizable contract to demolish and rebuild. Oddly enough though, instead of finding the heirloom, the Hares instead find something they weren't expecting inside the Dead End Hollow. A child. Along with this was something they were expecting, the infamous ethereal only known as the Dead End Butcher. With the Butcher bearing down on them, the Hares chase the child to ensure her safety, and dropping back out of the hollow, they are greeted by something even stranger. A whole group of people in the area that the Vision Corporation supposedly had already cleared out for demolition. Speaking to the locals, they find out that these people are largely children, the sick, and the elderly, all of whom have low ether adaptability and would therefore be difficult to relocate. Putting 2 and 2 together, the Hares deduce that Vision planned on simply demolishing these people along with the buildings that they are contracted to renovate. It's this very cost-cutting that allowed them to secure this contract over their competitor Billabong Heavy Industries in the first place. This project is quite the prestigious one, completion of which would allow Vision to enter the coveted TOPS Alliance. Meanwhile, Python discovers that the train that was supposedly carrying the explosives needed for demolition was actually carrying mercenaries dressed up as public security troopers. And in fact, fact, the supposed authorities keeping these civilians in the demolition zones were all such phonies. Vision, as it turns out, cares about the civilians, just only enough to make sure they all die so no witnesses remain to testify against their crime. And so, the Hares change objectives. They will take on Vision and save the civilians, so they can sue Vision for every penny they can squeeze them for in a class action lawsuit. Who said you can't do the right thing and also get paid to do so? Zen Zero takes a multi-pronged approach to its storytelling. Some segments are stylized like a comic book with a corresponding voiceover, some are bombastically animated cutscenes, and some parts are the more visual novel-style conversations that gacha games are more typically known for. However, they're broken up into nice small chunks so that things stay fresh. Instead of long-winded yap fest that only slightly change camera angle every few lines with characters using the same 5 pre-made animations, this approach makes the story much more digestible. And I cannot emphasize enough how much I appreciate Zen Zero's approach to world building. It always feels like it is naturally woven into the narrative, and is only the information that is immediately relevant to the current situation or character that the story is currently showing. This much more focused strategy not only leaves a lot more room for intrigue, it simply makes for a more pleasant experience overall. In between combat segments, Zen Zero also has the TV mode, which is a stylized grid used for more simple RPG-style storytelling. Well, it used to, but we'll get more into that later. It perfectly captured the chaotic and ever-shifting nature of the Hollows that I really think they were going for, and it never mattered to me that the combat arenas were never made to be stitched together into one giant map, because quite frankly, I liked how separated the RPG/light puzzle elements were from the combat. Some Zen Zero players might think they want an open-world version of Zen Zero, but believe me, you don't. Anyhow, things start to get serious as time ticks down to the scheduled demolition. The Hares plan on hijacking a train from Vision and using it to evacuate the civilians through the hollow. Since the train is fast and has some innate ether resistance, the exposure will be limited enough to safely extract them. However, when taking over the train, a mercenary blows up the tunnel, cutting off the escape route. The Hares take the Vision CEO, Perlman, hostage, and everyone takes shelter in the train while the mercenaries open fire. It's here that Nekomata finally reveals that she originally hired the Hares to take revenge on them. She was formerly a part of the Red Fang gang that they stole the lockbox from in the prologue. While she had drifted away from the Red Fang over the years, as an orphan, the gang was the closest thing she had to a family. However, after seeing the Hares risk their necks to save the little girl from the hollow, and then so easily sign on to save the civilians, as well as finding out that it wasn't the Hares' fault that the Red Fang leader died, she realized that there was no need to take vengeance anymore. So she decides to take Perlman and go negotiate with Vision alone. In the meantime, Python and the Hares decide to work on Plan B. The only remaining route out of the demolition area is on foot through the hollow, but obviously that's not going to work given the civilians' low ether aptitude. Fortunately though, the path is only on the edge of the hollow, so if they were to somehow shrink it, then the path would be clear. There is a pretty straightforward way to accomplish this. A hollow grows with the number and power of the ethereals that arise within it. In order to shrink the dead-end hollow enough to clear the path, the Hares would have to eliminate approximately 3,000 ethereals, or a single strong one. You guessed it, it's time to take out the dead-end butcher. But first, we shift to Nekomata's perspective. The tension rises as we find out that Perlman was simply a figurehead and he is of little use as a bargaining chip. Director Sarah, the true puppet master, orders the detonation of all Vision explosives, and it seems as though time had run out. But fortunately, the cunning Hares and Python pulled off the rescue. Through the power of friendship and this train I found, the Hares managed to blow up the dead-end butcher and shrink the hollow in time to save all of the civilians. Sarah prepares to order the mercenaries to fire, but fortunately the real public security force arrive alongside news crews, sealing the fate of the Vision Corporation. How did they manage to arrive so quickly? Well, fortunately, it seems that Belobog still had a bone to pick with Vision. So when they received word from Nicole that there would be an opportunity to take down their competitor, that was all that was needed to get them to call in the cavalry. All's well that ends well. And things are looking up for the cunning Hares, who not only have a lucrative court case ahead of them, but now have a new member, a newly forgiven Nekomata. Speaking of Belobog Heavy Industries, looks like they've come knocking with a generous commission thanks to Nicole's recommendation. As a construction company, they maintain a competitive edge thanks to their smart machinery, which allows them to conduct operations without having to worry about exposing workers to ether energy. However, recently all of their major automated heavy equipment ran off into a hollow without warning, which is where Python comes in. They need the Proxy to assist them in retrieving their machines, and to keep this incident on the down low as the company cannot afford any bad press right now. The pressure is on since they've taken over the contract that Vision previously held, and Belobog already has a shaky reputation ever since the previous president of the company mysteriously took a bunch of money and then disappeared the night before the old capital fell. This left the current president, Kaleda, with a massive chip on her shoulder. She's had to work hard to build the company back up after her father went missing that fateful night all those years ago. Despite this, her colleagues Grace, Anton, and Ben Bigger all did a great job of taking her under their wing, and as a result, they are closer to family than coworkers. This new contract is Belobog's big break, and so the four of them dive into the hollow with Python to investigate what's going on with the robotic equipment. The first one to be located acts like a young girl in love, extremely protective of her lover, which is an abandoned building she named Mr. White. Grace, the, and I quote, single as hell technician who views the automated construction equipment as her children, manages to appeal to Greta, the tunnel boring machine, and convince her to rejoin the company. The second one, deeper in the hollow, acts like a macho man, and who better to challenge him than the true bro, Anton. After a showdown, Hans the construction machine decides to prove his manliness through hard work and rejoins the company. Finally, the third machine, named Friday, initially remains silent as our heroes pursue him, until he finally breaks his silence by spouting nonsense about how his mentor Kors tasked him with the glorious purpose of fixing the mystic seal at the center of the hollow. In other words, he's a chunibyo. The team managed to subdue him, and Grace overrides him to get him back to the company. After some analysis, Grace reports that the reason why the three smart machines ran off into the hollow is because they received a signal from the original prototype smart machine that the former president of the company was developing, right before the incident that caused him to go missing. This explains why Friday insists that it was Kors who contacted him, and this signal also caused each machine's core to rapidly improve, with the side effect of them also having developed these quirky personalities. The signal is still being broadcast, but it's getting fainter over time, and so a plan is hatched to use these three machines to triangulate the position of the original prototype and investigate why it's broadcasting after all these years. This takes the team into the depths of the hollow, and to a location that has great significance to the company. It's the memorial square that Belobog was contracted to build back when Kors was in charge, and it's from this contract's money that Kors grabbed when he went missing. Strangely enough, the prototype machine is holding up the monument at its center, and when they investigate the cockpit, they find that it's riddled with bullet holes. They also find a receipt for the prototype's manufacturing costs, paid for by Kors himself. That's why he rushed out suddenly in the middle of the night. Whoever was helping him build the prototype suddenly forced him to pay early, something that if it fell through, would have sunk the company. Everyone thought that Kors simply embezzled the money and fled, but this record proves his innocence. As the team secures the prototype for retrieval, Friday remembers that there's something he's forgetting. What was that business about the seal again? Right on cue, something crawls out of the monument. Not quite human, not quite ethereal. Even so, it's got incredible ether energy, and in a flash, it absorbs the three main robot constructors to form a beast of machine and corrupted flesh. It seems unstoppable, but then Kaleda joins the fray in the prototype constructor. It might be impervious to Grace's grenades and Anton's drill, but there's no way it could survive being impaled by the monument it crawled out of, and so Kaleda pushes the monster back. It's got the might of three of the machines she's piloting though, and soon it becomes overloaded. Just when it seems like game over, Kaleda spots something inside the documents left inside the prototype.
クレタ、さあ、名前をつけてくれ。名前を呼べばきっとクレタの願いに応えてくれる。
親父、もう一回信じていいか。頼む、動け！ゲロー！なめんなよ！これが白蟻重工の誇るホロー用知能重機だ！侵食がなんだ！白蟻重工の門はな 絶対負けねえんだ。
While simple, the execution of this arc is basically flawless. Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero may be drastically different games, but there is one thing that both the player bases should be able to agree on. The Belobog arc was peak. Kalita has one more favor to ask of Bell and Wise. Analyze the external data core they found in the prototype machine. She hopes that it has more clues as to what exactly happened to her father that night. It's protected with powerful encryption, however, and the only person that Python knows of who could crack it is a hacker by the name of Rain, one of Nicole's friends. While they wait on Nicole to contact Rain on their behalf, let's take a brief detour to discuss some other aspects of the game. Enjoy the video so far? Be sure to give the video a thumbs up. There's no better way to tell YouTube's algorithm that this video is worth recommending to others. What's in it for you? Let me make you a special offer. If this video reaches 1,000 likes, I'll make a Zen Zero Smasher Pass video. So what are you waiting for? Like the video now. In between the events of the main story, the game continues to weave in other happenings that further give you a sense of daily life in downtown New Eridu. We witness the siblings have the world's mildest argument over what new movies to get for the store. Billy from the Cunning Hares invites you to play games at the arcade across the street, and in general, the game does a pretty good job of keeping things grounded and relatable. When you're not in story missions, you can also invite your unlocked characters to do activities together, successful completion of which builds up your relationship with them. While I definitely think that this is a step above the relationship systems present in a fair number of gacha games, I still think it's a little underbaked. Early on, you basically only get like 4 possible activities with any given character. Meanwhile, it takes quite a bit to unlock high trust with a character, so you wind up grinding through the same events a bunch of times, which just completely kills the illusion for me. I really like how you can randomly bump into characters throughout various in-game locations as well, and even increase trust with them that way. This feels far more organic than grinding out the same trust events over and over again. I just wish there was either more variety or a way to cut down on the grind. The repetition only serves to remind you that this is a video game, and these are characters who will always go through the exact same sequence of events until the servers shut down. Besides this, the most important story thread is probably the one that introduces Hollow Zero, the original Hollow that started the entire Hollow disaster. Finally, Zone Zero. It's even Zenless. It's the biggest and home to the baddest ethereals, and the Hollow Investigative Association is recruiting new members for its expeditions inside. The Proxy signs on to help, presumably because they aren't above an easy paycheck, only for them to run into the most notorious ethereal in the entirety of Hollow Zero. This is where the coolest character in the game makes her debut. Her name is Miyabi, and while I'll get into her backstory more later, she immediately impressed me as a must-pull character just on her design alone. The concept of having a familiar possess your sword for a superpowered strike, one that is so powerful your sheath requires biometric authentication. It's just so freaking awesome. The rest of her squad forms Section 6 of the Hollow Affairs and Neutralization Department, or HAND for short. If the new Eridu Public Security are your rank-and-file police, HAND is essentially the FBI. Why am I telling you all this? It's a surprise tool that'll help us later. With that settled then, let's pick up from where we left off. We rejoin our heroes at the Memorial Square where the Belobog Heavy Industries prototype was recovered, not much longer after the monster was skewered on the monument it crawled out of. Officers Xu Yuan and Qing Yi are on the scene taking statements from the Belobog workers, when all of a sudden Inspector Bringer arrives. He's been running for position of commander for your local city subdivision, and no doubt is here for an easy PR win to bolster his campaign. To his dismay, the trouble has already subsided, and the remains of the monster are already scheduled to be transferred to HAND for closer study. Unfortunately for Bringer, this means that the opportunity for him to bolster his reputation as the Hollow Hero has already passed. We later learn that Bringer is known for the selfless acts he carried out during the fall of the old capital, also known as the first outbreak of what is now known as the Hollow Disaster. Tales of his accomplishments served as an inspiration for all. In fact, it's the very reason why Zhu Yuan signed on to the force. That's why she and her partner Qingyi are now inviting residents of the Janus Quarter to a safety seminar to further strengthen Bringer's relationship with his would-be constituents. In the middle of this canvassing, the two resolve some relatively minor incidents that turn out to be caused by a thug with an EMP device, causing nearby technology to go haywire and nearly causing Bell to get hit by a car. We witness this dynamic duo track down this troublemaker in a hollow and discover that his gang was planning on using these EMP devices to rob vehicles transporting etheric materials, essentially using the EMP to disrupt these vehicles' locks without disrupting other systems. As the safety seminar with Bringer approaches, Qingyi makes an unexpected connection. The transport of the monster remains from earlier lines up with the EMP ambush points, and the carrier for this crucial evidence is essentially a modified etheric material transport. She suspects that the gang's true goal was to steal the monster remains, or at least someone else is paying them to do so. The only problem is the transport should be happening right now, so Zhu Yuan and Qingyi make the difficult decision to skip speaking at the safety seminar to ensure that the monster remains make it safely to Han headquarters. It's a good thing too, because Qingyi was right on the money. Wise and Bell were snooping around and managed to overhear the two officers discussing this and decide to help them out to return the favor for saving them earlier. Thanks to their efforts, they managed to thwart the plot to steal the monster remains, and they make it safely into Han custody. Zhu Yuan and Qingyi almost managed to connect the dots and figure out that Python is Bell and Wise, because the two of them quite frankly have terrible OPSEC. Before their cover is blown though, Zhu Yuan gets a call from none other than Miyabi. As it turns out, they used to be classmates at the academy. More importantly, she's got information about the monster remains. They managed to extract human DNA from it, but the analysis returned no matches with anyone from within the city's records. It seems that with every question answered, two take their place. We are treated to a quick glimpse of Sarah visiting Perlman in jail. It's a brief exchange, but Perlman claims to have evidence that will take down the true culprits at Vision. Meanwhile, the Hares are busy prepping for their big appearance in court, when they suddenly get a reply back from Rain. Oddly enough, despite receiving a number of messages from her, all of them are blank. Suspecting something is up, Python and the Hares follow the message's location data to the Ballet Twins, a pair of towers mostly engulfed in a hollow. Recently, however, the hollow is shrunk enough to allow one of the towers to poke out, and it's there they suspect that Rain sent her messages from. What she's doing there is beyond anyone, but whatever the case may be, it can't be good. Despite the opulent interior, the towers are an unsettling place. There are urban legends about it being haunted by the ghosts of a pair of dancers who were supposed to perform there the day the old capital fell. Anby has the feeling that she's being watched, and she was right, just not by anything supernatural. As it turns out, a group of combat maids by the name of Victoria Housekeeping have been clearing out the towers on behalf of a wealthy investor who wants to try and reclaim the twins from the hollow. Fortunately, Python and the Hares are already on friendly terms with the housekeepers because they helped Corrin escape from the dead-end hollow earlier in the game. I just forgot to mention that part. The Hares are out of time to investigate the situation with Rain, as they now need to catch a flight to the part of the city where the Vision case is being held. But Victoria Housekeeping decides to help out Python in exchange for the Proxy's help navigating the Ballet Twins. This assistance is sorely needed too. All of Victoria Housekeeping's data on the twins is really outdated, and the towers are an absolute mess. This is where Zen Zero really gets creative with its TV mode mechanics, forcing you to navigate around strange specters and unexpected power outages that plunge the area into darkness. The ethereals masquerading as ghosts aren't the only one keeping you company either. As it turns out, there's a platoon of rebel army soldiers who have been taking up residence there too. After interrogating a captured soldier, you find out that Rain has been taken captive and they've been using her to complete their main objective. Something you're not entirely sure about until you get a call from Billy. As it turns out, the airship they boarded to fly to the Vision case has been hijacked, and sleeping gas has knocked out everyone on board. Billy is only awake because his lung cybernetics malfunctioned and got stuck on anaerobic mode. The airship has mysteriously changed course and is now set to crash straight into the Ballet Twins hollow, something you all suspect the rebels has something to do with. Oh, and also, Billy has no idea how to pilot an airship. It's now a race against time to fight the rebels, make it to the top of the tower where their transmitter is located, save Rain, and stop the airship before it causes the Zen Zero equivalent of 9/11. It sounds like a tall order, but come on. Was there any doubt that you'd pull it off? Even if there wasn't ever really a risk of failure, they do a decent job of making it feel like you pulled it off by the skin of your teeth. Rain is caught right as she's falling to her death, the worst boss fight in the game gets in your way, and Lycon has to go all out to make it aboard the airship in a sick cutscene. Everyone is safe and the day is saved, with only one minor snag. Perlman wakes up early from the sleeping gas and steals the airship to make his escape out beyond the borders of the city. After the dust settles, Rain debriefs with Bell and Wise, mentioning that the rebels said something about a sacrifice, something that only becomes more intriguing once they review the decrypted data from the Belobog prototype, in which Kaleda's father mentions in an audio log that the monster in the monument was also called a sacrifice. Somehow it seems, Vision, Perlman, and the monster called the Sacrifice are all linked. So pack your bags and fasten your safety belt, because the next stop is the Outer Rim. In terms of main story relevance, most of the next part is a bit of a detour, so I'm going to paraphrase a bunch of parts. Python receives word that Perlman was located by the Sons of Caledon, a biker gang that Billy used to be a part of before he signed on with the Cunning Hares. On their way out to the small town the Sons of Caledon call home, however, it seems that someone has a bone to pick with them, as an unmarked truck causes your vehicle to go careening into the hollow below. It's here we learn that Bell and Wise, despite being adept at navigating hollows, both have a condition that makes them vulnerable to ether energy, meaning exposure to a hollow is extremely dangerous. Fortunately, the Sons of Caledon managed to rescue you in time, and the business with Perlman is put on the back burner because he's still recovering from crashing the airship he stole. What follows is a well-written tale of intrigue about life in the Outer Rim and the various gangs vying for control. They do a good job of laying out the world building without feeling like they're exposition dumping or lecturing the player on the minutiae of the setting. The Outer Rim is essentially run by these biker gangs, who are the only ones that are brave and strong enough to navigate the dangerous territory the Rim became after the fall of the old capital. If it weren't for their willingness to drive through peril to deliver vital supplies to the towns of the Outer Rim, trade, and therefore people's livelihoods here, would be impossible. Underpinning all of this is the vast reserves of fossil fuels the Rim has, providing crucial income for all those who otherwise struggle to scrape together a meager living in such a harsh environment. To determine which gang is in charge of assigning these trade routes, a race is held through the biggest hollow in the region, which is home to Cinder Lake, an eternally burning oil well that prevents the hollow from engulfing their oil fields. Recently, it seems that the Sons of Caledon have been getting the short end of the stick in terms of route assignments, and so their leader Caesar King has decided to toss her hat in the ring this year. They do a good job of subverting the typical trope of a corrupt leader being unjust towards the underdog by making the twist that it was the scheming second-in-command Lucius being behind all of the sabotage of the Sons of Caledon, and the main leader was actually a fair and just man who gets backstabbed by his cowardly right-hand man. It makes his corruption into an ethereal genuinely tragic, and the boss fight against him charged with emotion. All of the puzzle pieces fall into place when you find out that the race to Cinder Lake was sabotaged by Lucius so that companies back in the city would be able to gain further market share in the energy market, since the oil from the Outer Rim wouldn't be able to compete with their ether-based energy. The injustice of Lucius selling out the people of the Rim's livelihood for a fat payday from underhanded corporations served as an excellent setup for Caesar's noble sacrifice.
場所なんていくらでも買えばつきますわ。そうだよな、ルーシー。石油がなくたって俺らは別の場所で生きてける。けどそうしたくてもできねえ奴らはどうなる。悪い、これしか思いつかねえんだ。そんな顔すんなよ。怖くなっちまうだろ。シーサー、あなた。
And even though I did a bad job of mentioning it earlier, the foreshadowing makes the Deus Ex Machina here well earned.
何かが近づいてきてるみたい。
After all is said and done, Python takes a trip out to a memorial site in the Outer Rim to pay their respects to those who died in the first outbreak of the Hollow disaster. One name in particular stands out to them: their teacher, who disappeared the night the old capital fell. It's because of Carol Arna that they have their capabilities as a proxy, and she was the closest they had to a mother growing up as orphans. It's here they have a chance encounter with Miyabi, and they share a moment mourning those all three of them lost that fateful night all those years ago. I really appreciate that the writers took the time to spend a quieter moment with the protagonists, especially one that gives us a glimpse at their true motives. They're not simply trying to make a living in New Eridu, they're also trying to get to the bottom of what happened to their teacher, and it seems linked to what caused the Hollow disaster in the first place. Chekhov has had plenty of time to exercise his Second Amendment rights. Time to go to the firing range. Perlman is finally back to full health and reveals that he stockpiled evidence against Vision for months as a contingency in case they ever decided to betray him. In order to retrieve it, however, he needs safe passage back to the city, and assurance he will be protected from those in New Eridu who would silence him. To this end, Nicole calls in one of her biggest connections, none other than Miyabi Hoshimi of Hand. Now, to give you a bit of context on how crazy this is, it's finally time for me to tell you about the coolest character in the entire game. Miyabi is quite possibly the strongest sword fighter in the entirety of New Eridu, wielding the Hoshimi family's cursed blade, Tailless. She's a prodigy with the blade, showing talent from a young age, having gone through the crucible that was the fall of the old capital, in which her mother was corrupted by ether, and Miyabi was forced to kill her before she fully turned into an ethereal. Later, as a freshly graduated recruit from the academy, she slayed a colossal ethereal to halt the unexpected expansion of a massive hollow in under 5 minutes. This achievement granted her the title of Void Hunter, reserved only for the most accomplished of warriors by the mayor of New Eridu for valiance in the fight against the Hollow disaster. She is undoubtedly one of the biggest stars of the entire city. So how on earth is Miyabi in Nicole's Rolodex? I kid you not, it's because Nicole scammed Miyabi out of her sword one time. I guess you can't parry social engineering. Anyhow, there is a tense standoff between the Hand Section 6 members, the Hares, the Proxy, and Perlman, because Belle's presence there was immediate cause for suspicion. Yanagi, being the hyper-competent intelligence officer she is, correctly deduced that Python has had a hand in a lot of recent events, and found it strange that they happen to be around whenever something big seems to go down. And to be honest, that's not entirely unreasonable given the circumstances. With election season coming up, the political situation in the city is precarious, and it's Hand's duty to eradicate any threats to the city. Before Hand can make any moves, however, gunfire rings out. Rebel forces have closed in, no doubt with their sights trained on Perlman and anyone else who could serve as a witness. After an amazingly well-animated car chase, Belle is once again thrown into a nearby hollow, and through a random stroke of luck, Miyabi manages to find her. Miyabi has no intentions of letting Belle go until she's cleared of suspicion, but both still need to get out of the hollow, so Belle proposes that they work together. Miyabi takes care of the combat, Belle tackles navigation. Despite not having contact with Weiser Ferry, Belle is still able to manually calculate routes through the hollow, provided she gets enough data, and fortunately there are devices set up nearby to gather just that. Everything seems to be going smoothly, until it isn't. Tailless starts going berserk, and the two of them only barely manage to reseal the blade before everything is engulfed in the foxfire. Fortunately, after this they escape the hollow, and the entire incident is enough to earn the trust of Miyabi, and by extension, the other Section 6 members. Returning to the city, Belle and Wise regroup. While discussing what happened in the Outer Rim, suddenly Ferry goes haywire. Someone is attacking the HDD system, and at the same time, public security comes knocking. They insist on sweeping the store for any potential dangers, as the election has the entire city on high alert. Wise tries to stall the officers, but it seems to be of no use. The moment the door opens to the staff area, their activities as a proxy are sure to be uncovered. Mere fractions of a second before the siblings would have been hauled off to spend years behind bars, two friendly faces intervene. Fortunately, Fairy was able to get a message out to Qingyi despite being under cyber attack. Belle and Wise come clean to Zhu Yuan about everything. Their activities as a proxy, the plot they uncovered and are investigating alongside Hand. It's a lot for the straight-laced Zhu Yuan to take in. Fortunately, a call to Miyabi also lends much-needed credibility, especially since these PubSec officers are learning that Perlman mentioned that Vision was only emboldened because they have the support of someone powerful within public security. It's none other than their direct superior, Acting Commander Bringer. Zhu Yuan decides to give the proxy 24 hours to get the evidence they need to back up the allegations leveled against Bringer, something that is certainly easier said than done. Perlman was captured by the rebel troops that attacked you in the Outer Rim, so now it's up to the proxy in Section 6 to rescue him and recover evidence against the Vision Corporation. Needless to say, the rebel troops didn't stand a chance against the city's youngest Void Hunter and her elite teammates. As it turns out though, they didn't need to. It was a setup. Acting Commander Bringer accuses Section 6 of colluding with Perlman to endanger the city. In a clever move, Miyabi has Yanagi throw her under the bus and claims all responsibility, and throws Perlman back into the hollow in a fit of rage. Miyabi is taken into custody, but the rest of Section 6 is free to go, and they secure Perlman and the evidence. A brilliantly executed trade that avoided checkmate, but unfortunately it seems the enemy is 2 steps ahead. While regrouping, Zhu Yuan suddenly calls and asks the group to check Perlman's neck. Sure enough, Yanagi finds what Zhu Yuan was looking for. A tracking chip, still active since it was implanted in ever since he was first thrown in jail. Public security, in theory, should have known where Perlman was all along, even after he escaped to the Outer Rim. This means Bringer knew the whole time, and those he conspired with by extension. Yet to the vast majority of the officers at public security, Perlman's whereabouts were listed as unknown, and that could mean only one thing. Perlman wasn't their true target. Miyabi was. The proxy recalls the incident with Miyabi's sword going out of control, and it all starts to make sense. Zhu Yuan and the proxy figure out that Miyabi is being transported by train, and is headed straight for the press conference where Bringer is giving his acceptance speech for winning the election. Meanwhile, inside the train, Sarah pulls the pin on the grenade that is tailless, and then throws Miyabi out into the crowd gathered to hear Bringer's speech.
These people citizens? What? How could I? I will never wield my blade against the innocent.
Fortunately, Zhu Yuan and the proxy were able to knock Miyabi into the dead-end hollow when she went berserk, so nobody was harmed. That means that it's time to tighten the noose hanging around Bringer's neck. Zhu Yuan and Qingyi call in a favor with an undercover agent to lure out Bringer to the docks nearby, and Section 6 prepares to apprehend him. He's not going down without a fight, however. He runs into a nearby hollow and then morphs himself into a powerful ethereal that wields the power of Jorkin it. This area has tons of containers filled with ether energy, and with each canister he absorbs, the stronger he becomes. With each escalation, however, another ally comes to the proxy's aid. A team-up sequence that felt like worlds were colliding. Everyone is here, And together, you stand against the swarm of ethereals Bringer now commands. Just when he seemed weakened, however, another injection is delivered from the shadows, and Bringer is more dangerous than ever. Fortunately, Caesar is here with one final delivery. As played out as it is to do an Avengers Assemble style team-up sequence for the final fight, I felt like Zen Zero earned it. It genuinely felt like all of the relationships the Proxy built up until this point were the strength that was being called upon, and it was super fun to watch all of these disparate groups that normally wouldn't have any overlap in the game's world come together and fight as one. The credits afterwards are full of fun character interactions that serve as excellent fan service. Heck, they even had a nod to the popular Grace Billy ship. What's more, they even laid the groundwork for the story yet to come. Sarah and the elixir she used on Bringer is a clear source of intrigue, as is the mysterious contact she is talking to. We also get a heart-to-heart between Belle, Wise, and Miyabi, in which Miyabi designates you as her personal proxy, granting you the Hoshimi family's physical and political protection. And that's not even the best part.
レインガー答えてあんたたちは先生をどこにやったのカローレ・アルナキュート陥落の日白い腕が彼女をさらった
There's clearly more than meets the eye when it comes to our deuteragonists, and I look forward to see where the Zen Zero team take us in the future. After years of playing Hoyo games with awkward semi-mute protagonists, it's just so nice to finally play as a character that is actually a character and not blank slate number 574. In general, I really appreciate that, with the exception of perhaps Miyabi, all the playable characters are just normal people, and the conflict of the story is limited to new Eridu.
Copy that. Chingy, turn your body cam off. It's girl boss time.
Don't get me wrong, New Eridu is clearly made to be a megapolis that draws a lot on real-life megacities like Tokyo or Shanghai, but for the most part, there aren't any grandiose multiverse-spanning shenanigans, but just people trying to make their way through a world in crisis. Once again, I also have to reiterate that I massively appreciate their approach to world building in this game. It always feels like you have enough context for how the characters think and act, but no more than that. If this were Honkai Impact 3rd, you bet your butt we'd have had to slog through hours of a random character info dumping on the exact mechanics of hollows and ethereals and ether energy and tons of other details that don't really matter. While we're on this topic, let's discuss how Ever since I started playing the game when it launched, it became abundantly clear to me that Zen Zero shares a lot of DNA with Honkai 3rd, even if they aren't explicitly set in the same multiverse. Like, come on, instead of the Honkai disaster, we've got the Hollow disaster, both of which cause a highly dangerous and potent form of energy to show up and corrupt people into monsters. The character's ability to adapt to this energy is a key factor in their combat ability, which is heavily implied to have a large genetic component. World governments have formed organizations to fight the disaster and harness its power. Oh, and also the disaster seems to have screwed up the moon for some reason. You play as a team of 3 characters and 1 scrunkly little guy. And the gameplay is focused a lot on fast-paced combos in a hack-and-slash arena. Do I really need to continue any further? It's where Zen Zero diverges from Honkai 3rd that make it a far superior experience in my opinion. For starters, the Bang Boos are just so much better than Honkai 3rd's Elves and Astral Ops. Why? Well, they give you a ton of pulls for Bang Boos just for keeping up with the game, and let you choose the specific Bang Boo you're pulling for. Since Bang Boos are always available, you can actually count on having the one that's best for the team you're building. Compare this with Honkai 3rd, where the Elves are irrelevant due to power creep, and Astral Ops are just whale bait. As for the combat, it's a really fresh twist on Honkai 3rd's formula. It's got the familiar attack combos, charged attacks, active skills, and ultimates that you build up by attacking. The biggest 2 changes, however, is where Zen Zero takes it to the next level. For starters, swapping characters is a single button press, and while you can't choose who you swap to, timing your character swaps in response to enemy attacks allow you to parry. This alone is freaking genius in my opinion. Also, give the person who did the sound effect for a successful parry a raise. It's free to me. The second big change is the addition of a stun bar. Fill it up and you get to launch into a chain attack where your team takes turns rapidly swapping between each other and firing off powerful skills. This interruption to the cadence of combat ironically makes the combat feel faster, and makes stun an important core component of the combat. The game also makes the elemental damage system feel important by making it so you build up to inflicting status effects. But I'm going to be real with you, I'm not really knowledgeable enough to tell you how important it is beyond inflicting status effects means more damage. In general, it does seem like the combat system has the potential for a lot of depth, but I wouldn't know about it because I can just mash buttons like the caveman I am and still win. The game has 2 primary difficulties, normal and Games Journalist. I play on normal, of course, but if it wasn't clear by now, the vast majority of Zen Zero is not difficult. The endgame modes seem to be your typical gacha endgame artificial difficulty, so unfortunately the game doesn't really have many places for players to show off true skill-based gameplay. Such are the limitations of it being a gacha game, I suppose. One change they also made to the core combat that I think was overall really good for the game is how ultimates work. When the game launched, your team built up points collectively. Once you hit 3,000 points, you could fire off an ultimate. The problem was, since this was shared, you pretty much would only wind up using the ultimate that does the most DPS and then be done with it, meaning you basically never saw your other teammates' ult animations. I suppose there were theoretically niche scenarios in which it would be better to use an ult that did more stun instead of raw damage, or did more elemental application or something, but once again, the game just isn't difficult enough to require players to think about it beyond do the move that kills the enemy the fastest. So not too long ago, they made it so that points are tracked per character, effectively making it basically like any other game where each character has their own ult energy to manage. Sure, it made Zen Zero less unique, but sometimes stuff is a certain way because it works. Zen Zero overall has come to focus almost exclusively on its combat over the last few major updates, which as a TV mode enjoyer, I have to say is a bit of a shame because I feel like the TV mode is one of the ways Zen Zero stood out with its own identity. I get that the devs are just responding to feedback from the community, but it's a shame that instead of actually addressing the main complaint about the TV mode, which was the repetitive animations and other small rough patches that made the TV mode feel too slow, they just decided to cut it entirely. This is especially obvious with how they handled the game's roguelike mode. First, it was the full original Zen Zero experience that bridged the combat with the TV mode, then they introduced a mode that was just the combat, then they replaced it with a different mode altogether. What is it, you may ask? It's just Elysian Realm. Like, actually just Elysian Realm. Now, I do still think it's more interesting than the actual Elysian Realm just by virtue of having more variety, but there's no doubt about it being a cloned game mode. I really do hope that they eventually figure out how to reintroduce the TV mode in a way that addresses the actual problems the player base had with it, because I think it can work. So for the past little bit, I've talked a lot about Zen Zero's identity, which I suppose it's now time to talk about the elephant in the room. You may have heard that a lot of people consider Zen Zero to be a... Alright, so first off, yes, the marketing for Zen Zero undoubtedly has a lot of fan service. I just can't help but think it's so freaking funny that people are losing their minds over this kinds of stuff when games like Nikkei exist. The actual game itself is comparatively tame. I'm not going to deny that this game has sexualized character designs, because daggum. At this point, I'm convinced Hoyo has someone in my walls with how much some of these characters appeal to my personal taste.
They should make a gun that doesn't whisper stuff to you.
But at the same time, pretty much everybody in this game is hot and are sexualized. Heck, even the NPCs are hot. Seriously, Zen Zero seems to be the first gacha game to finally crack getting NPCs to look just as good as the playable characters, even the random ones you find walking around in the city streets. In general, the visuals of the game are fantastic, although I definitely took a while to get adjusted to the flatter, more 2D anime style colors of the game. Part of me still thinks that if they took the shader from Star Rail and put it over Zen Zero, you would have the ultimate best looking Hoyo game. But that doesn't mean Zen Zero as it currently is bad. I get that Hoyo would want to try and visually distinguish how this game looks from their other offerings. Oh man, and I haven't even gotten to... You wanna know where all the animation budget for Honkai 3rd and Star Rail went? It's here in Zen Zero. Seriously, if there's anything that this game will be remembered for, it'll be for how fluid and expressive the animations are. Heck, if you log in after a 2+ week absence, just look at what freaking Belle does. Girl must be on enough stimulants to fry even the most ADHD-riddled brain. In general, the addition of techniques traditionally associated with 2D animation to Zen Zero's visual style just adds to the feeling of the game being overflowing with personality. I am no expert, and there are entire videos dedicated to breaking down just how crazy the animations are for this game by people who are far more qualified than I am, so I'd recommend you check those out if you want to learn more, but wow. Them some good animations. Time to check yaps about the soundtrack off of your Codename Vermilion bingo cards. More than just being fun to listen to, the Zen Zero soundtrack further contributes to the game's sense of style. Seriously, this game would not feel right if the background music didn't so perfectly build its atmosphere. It makes the hollows feel chaotic yet lucrative, and it makes the various locales throughout the game feel alive. Just take a quick listen.
That's right.
There is one other track in particular I want to talk about, but for that we may as well move on to our next topic. Zen Zero, in my opinion at least, is the first Hoyo game to finally crack making gacha pulls phenomenal, which makes it dangerous. You see, in pretty much every gacha game, it's common for there to be a tell that differentiates when a pull or a 10 pull contains something rare. In Genshin, the meteor shines gold. In Nikkei, the door flashes gold. In Reverse 1999, the wheel shines orange. Zen Zero also has a gold shine, but in addition, the gacha pull music gains lyrics.
Yeah, the shining golden side. Let your inner spark ignite.
I also massively appreciate the little reveal animation that plays whenever you pull an S rank. It feels like they put actual effort into making the gambling special instead of other Hoyo games where it just slaps the freaking splash art on the game and calls it a day. Undoubtedly, these enhancements to the gambling are to make it that much more addictive, but I have to give them credit for the extra effort. They're not quite as flashy as Wuwa's pull animations, so Kuro Game still has the advantage there, but a step up is a step up regardless. I also appreciate how optional W engines have been thus far. Sure, you get some extra visual effects for equipping a signature W engine, but it's not like Star Rail or Wuwa where a character can feel borderline incomplete if you don't have it. Let's hope it stays that way. At the end of the day, I don't recommend Zenless Zone Zero. It's still a gacha game, And as with any gacha game, it suffers from a bunch of BS that's designed to get you hooked for as long as possible and to get you to open your wallet to compensate for problems they invented just to sell you the solution. So far, the game has managed to deliver consistently well-written story updates, phenomenally well-designed characters, and mostly avoided excessive power creep. But only time will tell if the Zen Zero team manages to avoid the pitfalls other Hoyo games have fallen into long-term. If for whatever reason you are set on getting into a Hoyo game though, there isn't a better one to choose, which is why Zenless Zone Zero is the pinnacle of the Hoyoverse.